Good afternoon from Pullen Park in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're going to read about secession today, and from a group of people that you might not be expecting the idea of secession to come from. But we're going to read the declaration by the people of the Cherokee Nation of the causes which have impelled them to unite their fortunes with those of the Confederate States of America. Whew! That's a lot. But anyway, that's what we're going to read. Now, just to let you know, the beginning of this particular document is going to sound very similar to the Declaration of Independence. So let me know if you get what I'm saying here. When circumstances beyond their control compel one another to sever the ties which have long existed between them and another state or confederacy, and to contract new alliances and establish new relations for the security of their rights and liberties, it is fit that they should publicly declare the reasons by which their action is justified. The Cherokee people had its origin in the South. Its institutions are similar to those of the southern states, and their interests identical with theirs. Long since it accepted the protection of the United States of America, contracted with them treaties of alliance and friendship, and allowed themselves to be to a great extent governed by their laws. In peace and war, they have been faithful to their engagements with the United States. With much of the hardship and injustice to complain of, they resorted to no other means than solicitation and argument to obtain redress. Loyal and obedient to the laws and stipulations of their treaties, they served under the flag of the United States, shared common dangers, and were entitled to a share in the common glory, to gain which their blood was freely shed on the battlefield. When dissensions between the southern and northern states culminated in a separation of state after state from the Union, they watched the progress of events and anxiety and consternation. I want to read that again. When the dissensions between the southern and northern states culminated in the separation of state after state from the Union, they watched the progress of events with anxiety and consternation. While their institutions and the contiguity of their territory to the states of Arkansas, Texas, and Missouri made the cause of the succeeding states necessarily their own cause. Their treaties had been made with the United States, and they felt the utmost reluctance, even in appearance, to violate their engagements or set at naught the obligations of good faith. I want to stop right here for a second. So understand by now, we're looking at the Cherokee of Oklahoma, which is the largest band, but that's the Cherokee of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma does indeed, there was no Oklahoma at this time, it was Indian Territory. But this Indian Territory does indeed border Texas, Arkansas, and Missouri. So that's what they're talking about. All right. Conscious that they were a people few in numbers compared with either of the contending parties, and that their country might with no considerable force be easily overrun and devastated, and desolation and ruin be the result if they took up arms for either side. Their authorities determined that no other course was consistent with the dictates of prudence or could secure the safety of their people and immunity from the horrors of a war waged by an invading enemy than a strict neutrality. And in this decision, they were sustained by a majority of the nation. So in other words, what? You're either with the Union or you're with the Confederacy, right? They, right now, chances are armies may well even go through, their boundaries. So you're either with, if you will, the Union or the Confederacy. Now, let's back to the reading. That policy was accordingly adopted and faithfully adhered to. Early in the month of June of the present year, the authorities of the nation declined to enter into negotiations for an alliance with the Confederate States and protested against the occupation of the Cherokee country by their troops or any other violation of their neutrality. No act was allowed that could be construed by the United States to be a violation of the faith of the treaties. But providence rules the destiny of nations and events by inexorable necessity. Overrule human resolutions. The number of Confederate states has increased to 11. And their government is firmly established and consolidated. Maintaining in the field an army of 200,000 men, the war became for them but a succession of victories. Disclaiming any intention to invade the northern states, they sought only to repel invaders from their own soil and to secure the right of governing themselves. They claimed only the privilege asserted by the Declaration of American Independence and on which the right of the northern states themselves to self-government is founded. Of altering their form of government when it became no longer tolerable, and establishing new forms for the security of their liberties. Throughout the Confederate States, we saw this great revolution effected without violence or the suspension of the laws or the closing of the courts. The military power was nowhere placed above the civil authorities. None were seized and imprisoned at the mandate of arbitrary power. All division among the people disappeared, and the determination became unanimous that there should never again be any union with the northern states. Almost as one man, all who were able to bear arms rushed to the defense of an invaded country. And nowhere has it been found necessary to compel men to serve or to enlist mercenaries by the offer of extraordinary bounties. But in the northern states, the Cherokee saw with alarm a violated constitution, all civil liberty put in peril, and all the rules of civilized warfare and the dictates of common humanity and decency unhesitatingly disregarded. In states which adhere to the Union, a military despotism has displaced the civil power, and the laws became silent amid arms. Free speech and almost free thought became a crime. The right to the writ of habeas corpus, guaranteed by the Constitution, disappeared at the nod of a Secretary of State or a general of the lowest grade. The mandate of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was set at naught by the military power, and this outrage on common right approved by a president sworn to support the Constitution. War on the largest scale was waged, and the immense bodies of troops called into the field in the absence of any law warranting it under the pretense of suppressing unlawful combination of men. The humanities of war, which even barbarians respect, were no longer thought worthy to be observed. Foreign mercenaries and the scum of cities and the inmates of prison were enlisted and organized into regiments and brigades and sent to the southern states to aid in subjugating a people struggling for freedom. To burn, to plunder, and to commit the basest of outrages on women. Quick stop here. You'll notice this also in literature after the Civil War, and possibly even a little bit around the post-Reconstruction time. Outrages tends to be another way of saying rape. So that's basically what they're saying to you. Okay, let's go back to the reading. While the heels of armed tyranny trod upon the necks of Maryland and Missouri, and men of the highest character and position were incarcerated upon suspicion and without process of law in jails, in forts, and in prison ships. And even women were imprisoned by the arbitrary order of a president and cabinet ministers. While the press ceased to be free, the publication of newspapers was suspended and their issues seized and destroyed. The officers and men taken prisoners in battle were allowed to remain in captivity by the refusal of their government to consent to an exchange of prisoners, as they had left their dead on more than one battlefield that had witnessed their defeat, to be buried and their wounded to be carried by Southern hands. Okay, well, let's stop there for a little while. We're going to pick up the rest of this. One thing I probably do want to get at here for a second is when they're talking about trod upon the necks of Maryland and Missouri. Okay, so we're talking about 11 states, if you will, that were brought in. This is going to exclude Kentucky, it's going to exclude Missouri, and it's going to exclude Maryland. Matter of fact, also Delaware and Washington, D.C. And certainly when we talk about Maryland, what did they do? They actually brought troops in to hold Maryland and, arrested people that they thought were being seditious in order for Maryland to go. And they didn't have any choice, right? If you take Maryland, well, Virginia's gone. Washington, D.C. is a complete enclave. So they have really no choice but to do that. At any rate, I'm going to continue on the other side of this. We're not too far from done. Okay, take care, y'all. Bye-bye. I'll be back.